Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and this is my monthly ranking for every new release I saw in the month of November. So I apologize, life got in the way. It was a really rough end of October, start of November for me. It was also very busy, and I was at the Denver Film Festival. So between personal issues, hectic schedules, and just a ton of movies to see. Unfortunately, I didn't have a ranking for October, so I'm really sorry. It's actually the first time I've missed a month since starting this series way back in January 2018. So my nearly 2 year streak was broken. But I'm back with a vengeance, y'all, because I have 20 movies to rank for the month of November, whether it be through the onslaught of Netflix films, Amazon getting into the game, or just new theatrical releases. This was an insane month for new movies. So how I'm going to work at this time, since there are just so many. If I have reviewed the film here on my channel, it's just going to be a very quick reasoning as to why I ranked it where I did, so that I can give a little bit of an explanation for the films I did not review. And there are a lot of films on this list that I did not review here on the channel. Now, I won't be including anything I saw at the Denver Film Festival that has not been released to this point. So if it's a December or January release, it won't be included here in the ranking. Also, just my opinion, just my thoughts. I actually think this is a great month. November turned it out for the most part. So coming up with like the top 14 on this list was difficult right off the bat. But yeah, this is just my list. I look forward to hearing your list and what you saw and how you rank those films in the comment section down below. So without further ado, let's kick things off. At number 20, I have Playing with Fire. This was the last movie I saw this month. I barely got it in for the ranking. And my goodness, yeah, it was terrible. Like, it was so bad right off the bat with John Leguizamo just overacting to the max, like the worst I've ever seen him do it in his career. And that's saying something. I mean, it's bad. John Cena is terrible in this movie. The children are okay as actors, I suppose, but their characters are just so horrific that I was like, what are we doing? Is this a Looney Tunes gone wrong or what? But it's cheesy. It caters down to the lowest possible denominator, trying to get children to laugh. And it is predictable just across the board. The direction is worse than bland. It's like offensively bad. This movie offended me on a spiritual level as a film watcher. I really thought it was bad. And since I did not see Arctic Dogs, this had a clear pathway to dead last on the list. Coming in at number 19, I have 21 Bridges. So I don't think this movie was terrible. I just think it was so standard and so bland that I almost forgot that I even watched it. Chadwick Boseman, he's fine. Stefan James is actually probably the best in here, but then we have Sienna Miller and Taylor Kitsch. Woo! Sienna Miller actually might be competing for like one of my least favorite characters of the year. I thought her performance was terrible. I thought the character was written terribly. This movie is so predictable right from the get-go, right from the onslaught. It tries to balance like a complicated issue, but it ends up coming off like not great in any of it. Thankfully, both of these bottom two movies are super short, but whew, they felt really long. Thankfully, it was short. It flew by, but 21 Bridges was just such a nothing burger to me. It's not terrible, just is there. So make sure you check out my review and hear my full thoughts. Coming in at number 18, I have Last Christmas. Riddled with cliches and a twist that doesn't quite get the job done. Our leads here are what really save what is otherwise a really wayward type of Christmas film. Make sure to check out my review for Last Christmas to see the full deets on why it's number 18. At number 17, I have Midway. Roland Emmerich is back and just as big and loud and noisy as he has always been. But at least it looked pretty, and his direction is actually what elevates otherwise just blah material across the board. Check out my midway review and see why this one flew in at number 17. At number 16, I have The King, the Netflix original starring Robert Pattinson and, of course, Timothée Chalamet as the king himself. I'm going to be honest, this film falls into somewhat of a guilty pleasure just because, like, when it gets into camp level, I'm all about it. When these characters get to just, like, go ham and insult each other and smack the wall and talk about charades and such, that's when I'm in love. And I think it is great. Timothée Chalamet's haircut, not great. Robert Pattinson's French accent, not great. Plus, it meanders a lot. You know exactly what's happening, obviously, right from the outset. It's a fine period piece, but really, it's those camp, over-the-top moments that elevate it to get up to number 16 at all. At number 15, I have The Good Liar. Helen Mirren and Ian McKellen make a great case to get their own romantic comedy, if I'm being honest. And if you're able to leave all logic at the door, there's some fun to be had with this one. It just doesn't do anything extraordinary. Make sure to check out my full review of The Good Liar to see how it landed at number 15. Come again, at number 14, I have I Lost My Body. One of 2 Netflix animated films to be included here on the ranking. I Lost My Body is aimed at an older, more mature audience, and honestly, the most striking part of this film is the 2D animation style, and I really commend Netflix for giving these 2D animated films a home, and they're really actually experimental films. This one, in both animation style and subject matter, storytelling, I was very intrigued, very interested in the story we were telling. And it got to me. By the end, I was definitely feeling the feels that the movie was trying to convey. What keeps I Lost My Body from moving up further in the countdown is I didn't love the romantic aspect to the film as much. I just don't think it was necessarily handled as well. I love the message that is given once the big reveal happens, but the romance itself just kind of felt meh to me. And I don't know that I love where we ended up. It had me thinking ever since I watched this film, so that's definitely saying something. I continually kind of go back to it and think on the themes and what it was trying to convey. I just don't know that it was completely successful in its ending, conveying those messages. Coming in at number 13, I have Dark Waters. Dark Waters is one of many true story films here on the countdown for November. Hey, it's award season. What do you expect? It's a really important story that is acted very well by Mark Ruffalo in particular, and Tim Robbins, actually, who I think gives one of his best performances in certainly several years. But its lackadaisical approach to time is what really keeps Dark Waters from moving up the list. And if you want to hear more about that and why Dark Waters hits number 13, make sure to check out that review. Coming in at number 12, I have The Irishman. I know, Scorsese not in the top 10? What can I say? This is actually higher than I anticipated the film being heading into watching it. It was a chore for me to even get the oomph to watch this movie because I'm just like, Scorsese, gangster films at a 3.5 hour runtime. I've seen this all before, over and over again. And as Silent showed with him, for me personally, longer doesn't always mean better. But I will say, I think our cast is amazing in this film. Robert De Niro gives his best performance in ages, if I'm being honest. It was great to see Pesci back on the screen, who also was wonderful, as is Al Pacino, who kills it in this movie. And I like the direction this film is taken in. It shows growth for Scorsese as a storyteller in and of himself, because it's not just another mob story. It is for like 2 hours. But it develops into something deeper and more meaningful. But there was no reason this needed to be 3.5 hours long. We really need to get these editors to crack down on some of these filmmakers, because there's a lot of filler in here, and a lot of been here, done that. We've seen it all before. It doesn't really add much to the story. So it's good. I enjoyed it. Particularly, I enjoyed the last act of the film. But I'm not enamored with it. I don't love it like so many others do, and that's why it's at number 12 for me. Coming in at number 11, I have Frozen 2. The sequel to the worldwide phenom from Disney. Frozen 2 is a step up from its predecessor in my books. We go down a deeper path that allows for much more character development and a more mystical side of this world that I fell in love with, plus a strong soundtrack, and I was on board. If you want to know my full thoughts on Frozen 2, make sure to check out my review. So breaking in the top 10, I have Jojo Rabbit. Now, I really liked Jojo Rabbit quite a bit more than I had originally anticipated. The themes of love and acceptance and this budding friendship between our two central characters was very endearing and actually a departure from what I went into the film anticipating. Plus, Scarlett Johansson gives a stellar performance in this film. And of course, it's always nice to see those messages of love overcoming hate, as well as seeing just kind of what happened to people and impressionable children when you're faced with this kind of propaganda. What didn't work so well in Jojo Rabbit for me personally was, well, Taika Waititi in the film himself. It did not work at all for having Adolf Hitler as the imaginary friend for me. Maybe it would have worked, but I'm gonna be honest, Waititi's humor is very meh to me. It's not really my personal style, and it didn't work in this film. Plus, we've seen this oppressed having to teach the oppressor story several times. It is more refreshing when it's done through the eyes of a child, and I think that helps it a little bit. But even there, we get some pretty crazy stuff that happens in this film. So overall, it was a really enjoyable, sweet little film, but didn't quite nail it all for me personally. At number 9, I have Dr. Sleep. I actually saw this movie twice at the end of October, as well as seeing it a second time at the beginning of November, and I think I loved it more the second time I watched it. I gained so much out of that second viewing. I think this was a pretty stellar follow-up to one of the biggest horror films of all time, led by fantastic performances from Ewan McGregor and Rebecca Ferguson. The story was wonderful, and again, we tapped in to those more fantastical elements that I loved. So make sure to check out my review of Dr. Sleep to see how it ended up all the way up at number 9. Coming in at number 8, I have The Report. Now, originally I saw this film at the Denver Film Festival, and I loved it. This was able to capture the urgency and the tension that Dark Waters needed to maintain. The Report maintains it through and through with another very important story that just needs to be told. Now, this one barely made the cutoff as Amazon Prime Video released it just here at the very end of the month. So make sure you check out my full review of The Report and see why it landed in at number 8. Coming in at number 7, my favorite animated film of the month, we have Klaus. What a wonderful, sweet little movie about the origins of Santa Claus. I loved this reimagining of the tale. I thought it was so clever in its different ways of introducing these myths and legends that we all know by now. That animation is stunning, especially getting to see some of the ways that the final product came to light. It's really stellar work. It looked fantastic in film form. I think the messages are also very sweet. To go along with all that heartwarming Christmas spirit, there's also quite a few laughs as well. Now, what keeps Klaus from moving up even further on the list? Well, there's a couple random moments, particularly that postman song when he schools the boy on being on the naughty list. That was too much for me. And the leaders of the clans and some of these characters in the village, meh. Plus, obviously, it's pretty predictable with the story itself. But it's still a fantastic animated film for the holiday season that I can see becoming an annual tradition. At number 6, I have Honey Boy. Another film I loved way more than I had anticipated heading in. This was such an authentic and cathartic movie-going experience, unlike anything else I have felt in the cinema for 2019. Anchored by wonderful performances from both Noah Jupe and Shia LaBeouf. Make sure to watch my full review of Honey Boy to see how it got all the way up to number 6. So kicking off the top 5 movies of November, I have Knives Out. Another film I saw at the Denver Film Festival, this was actually the movie that kicked off our festival. Rian Johnson delivers a really fantastic, somewhat subversive, whodunit type of murder mystery that will not only keep you on your toes throughout, but will keep you smiling from start to finish because these characters are wonderful. The script is really smart, it's witty, and it's very funny. Simply put, seeing Knives Out was one of the best theatrical experiences I've had this year. And at this point, I've seen it 3 times. But make sure you head on over to my full review for Knives Out and see why it's worth the top 5. So again, at number 4, I have A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. I've heard a lot of other people really criticizing this film, which is actually a shock to me. I'm completely stunned by that because I thought Marielle Heller knocked it out of the park yet again. Of course, Tom Hanks is stellar as Steve Rogers himself, but what I loved most about this movie is that it swerved, being just another stereotypical biopic, and instead decided to just present a long, mature, fantastic episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It gave us the feeling rather than just the play-by-play, and I thought it was 100% successful in delivering that. If you want to know more about why I loved A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, check out my full review. Coming in at number 3, I have Parasite. Oh, I'm so glad I finally was able to get into that movie theater and see this film because it completely lived up to all the hype. I loved it. Another film about class warfare that creates a really out there and fun scenario that makes you think, that makes you laugh, that keeps you on the edge of your seat until it all just explodes by the end in glorious fashion. In a year that has delivered many Eat the Rich films, this one is definitely near the top of that list and one of the best films I saw in November. So coming in the runner-up position at number 2, I have Queen and Slim. Oh, I loved it. I loved it so much. It had enough style to match the really deep substance that was on full display here, but it all serves as a bedpost for this beautiful love story on the run that I was completely involved with. I let myself fly into, and it got me. It hooked me, reeled me in, and got me. Not only is Queen and Slim my number 2 for November, it's one of my favorite films of the entire year. And if you want to know more about why I loved this film so much, make sure to check out my full review of Queen and Slim. So that just leaves us with one final film to take this top spot for my November ranking, and that is Ford v Ferrari. What can I say? I loved it. I can certainly acknowledge some flaws in the film. I definitely think the villain roles, whether it be the Italians and the Ferrari clan to the Ford clan, especially the Ford clan. Josh Lucas, I'm looking at you. Overall, I thought this was such a human story about a great friendship, about these men who were just striving in their dreams and their goals. It is technically a marvel to behold across the board. And honestly, Ford v Ferrari was thrilling, it was funny, it was deep, and it delivered everything I hope for when I walk into any cinema. Much like Queen and Slim, this isn't only my favorite film for November, this is one of my favorite films all of 2019. If you want to hear why I love Ford v Ferrari so much, make sure to check out my full review for my number 1 film of November, Ford v Ferrari. Woo! We made it! We did it! So that is my personal ranking for all 20 new releases I saw in the month of November. So what did you think of how I ranked these films? But more importantly, make sure you jump in and participate. Leave your own November ranking in the comment section down below, or you can hit me up on Twitter. And if you liked this video, make sure that you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel so you are always up to date on my latest videos. I love you all so much for your continued support. Mwah! Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!